The future of work and the future of talent is something that's on everybody's mind, and technology is at the heart of a lot of these changes. So the future of work is really the future of skills. It's a future of trust and speed, actually. So AI is taking tasks off of people's plates, but companies still need judgment. They still need creativity. They need ethics. They need leadership. And the best talent today wants two things. They want purpose. I see that more and more. And the other one is autonomy, more than ever. The best companies understand that culture has to be designed intentionally. Flexibility is table stakes at this stage. What really matters is clarity, alignment, and having great leaders.
Welcome to Canada Now. I'm Ashley Smith, and every week we dig into the bold ideas, real stories, and fresh perspectives shaping Canada's future. Let's get into it. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Canada Now, the show where we dig into the people, ideas, and innovations moving Canada forward. I'm your host, Ashley Smith. I'm very excited to introduce today's guest. This is a gentleman that I've gotten to know over the last several years, and he never ceases to amaze me in terms of all of the variety of things that he gets himself into in business, in technology, and most importantly, in social impact. So I want to welcome our very special guest today, Mr. Jay Rosenzweig. Jay is an internationally renowned social impact entrepreneur, humanitarian, and leadership strategist. As founder and CEO of Rosenzweig Company, he's spent over 2 decades helping organizations from high-growth startups to global corporations design and build world-class leadership teams. Jay is also the creator of the annual Rosenzweig Report on Equality, a globally recognized benchmark for women's representation in senior leadership, endorsed by leaders from business, politics, and culture. A passionate human rights advocate, he chairs the board of the Raoul Wallenberg Centre for Human Rights and serves on several other purpose-driven boards advancing education, healthcare, and equity. Beyond advisory work, Jay invests in emerging tech companies across North America and beyond, and continues to use his platform to champion equality, opportunity, and innovation on the world stage. Jay, welcome to Canada Now. Thank you so much for being here today.
Happy to be here.
I think I want to start a little bit with your core business and then lean into some of the fun other things that we can dive into together. It's the end of 2025. A lot of things are going on the world stage, a lot of things going on geopolitically, from a Canadian perspective, and not just because of political culture, but also AI innovation and the world moving at such a rapid pace. I have been thinking a lot about the future of work and the future of talent and how people position themselves and steer their own personal career journeys, but also from a company perspective, what they're thinking about. And so I want to dive into that topic. But before we do, can you please share with the audience a little bit about what it is that you do with your company? And that way it can lay a foundation as we get into this topic.
Yes, for sure. For decades, I've been helping companies large and small design, build, and attract world-class teams. So I got into that business with a boutique firm pretty early on. I'm a lawyer by background. I'm a lawyer by training. And I still have my hand in that through a human rights organization that I am the chair of, the board chair of. But I helped this boutique firm in the executive recruitment space grow to the point where Korn Ferry, the largest recruiting firm in the world, bought us. It was a great experience for me. Young guy, firm was acquired. Suddenly, I'm one of the youngest partners globally at the world's largest recruiting firm. And it was a great experience. Stayed on for a few years, phone ringing off the hook, leveraging off of the brand. But ultimately, I'm an entrepreneur by nature. And I realized that as a boutique, I could better serve my clients. So I broke away again a couple of decades ago to start my own firm to be sort of the alternative to these big firms. And I've been fortunate. The vision's been realized. We're doing work now all around the world, really interesting leadership projects. And we are, in fact, often looked at as the alternative to sort of like the big five globally in our sector. It's been a really, really fun ride.
Having spanned the last couple of decades and seeing the business landscape and leadership landscape changing, you've clearly put a lot of time and energy into looking at diversity in organizations and that sort of a thing. I want to dive into that in a minute. But first, over the last 5 years, what would you say has been the biggest shift that might impact some of the work that you do with Rosenzweig and Company?
I think leadership, for one thing, is becoming more and more fluid and more global. So the old model of one person sitting, in the big seat for a decade is fading. We're seeing fractional, interim, cross-border, and even portfolio-style leadership becoming more mainstream. So companies want deep expertise on demand, and leaders want flexibility and impact. So the firms that win are the ones that can assemble world-class talent quickly, and not just within the postal code. So that's one of the elements. It always comes down to leadership. And I'm very focused on understanding what leadership means at any given point in time.
Do you find that you're ever bringing some of these emerging concepts to organizations, or are they coming to you, for example, saying we're looking for a fractional CEO or CFO or any XO?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. The future of work and the future of talent is something that's on everybody's mind. And technology is at the heart of a lot of these changes. So the future of work is really the future of skills. It's a future of trust and speed, actually. So AI is taking tasks off of people's plates, but companies still need judgment. They still need creativity. They need ethics. They need leadership. And the best talent today wants two things. They want purpose. I see that more and more, and I'm encouraged by that. I love the fact that young people actually want to have purpose and impact. And the other one is autonomy, more than ever. So the best companies understand that culture has to be designed intentionally. Flexibility is table stakes at this stage. What really matters is clarity, alignment, and having great leaders, having great managers. And it's actually a fun time to be at the heart of all of it. Yeah.
From a Canadian perspective, are you noticing any nuance in terms of appetite or willingness to shift up strategy when it comes to talent search?
Yeah, I think Canada is actually punching above its weight when it comes to innovation. You see amazing growth-oriented venture capital funds like Radical Ventures with AI at its heart, with its leadership really in a lot of ways being disciples of the godfather, Jeff Hinton of AI. You see Shopify, but many scale-ups struggle with going global early enough. Those are two examples of firms that have. And the ones that break through like that really treat Canada as a foundation, but not the end of the market. They anchor here, but they think internationally from day one. That's something that I've always done myself. And so talent, capital, partnerships, distribution is not only local. So the next generation of Canadian winners will be the ones who build with global ambition, but Canadian values at the same time, because we should be proud of our Canadian heritage.
I am curious what trends you're seeing when you're talking about scaling globally and perhaps seeking out international talent with everything that's been going on in the last 12 months or so. Mm-hmm. Are we seeing a shift in the strategies and what international might mean to a Canadian organization thinking about scaling?
Well, I mean, I spend a lot of time watching three things. One is AI, clearly, right? And especially as it intersects personally, I have a deep interest in health, climate, and productivity. And I could talk to you about some of the businesses I'm involved in that regard. I really care about clean energy technologies because the transition is accelerating faster than most people realize. And not only is it important for our world and the well-being and the survival of our world, frankly, but also I think it's an area where a lot of money can be made. And thirdly, human performance and well-being, because leaders who are calm, clear, and grounded will outperform everyone. I'd say the whole well-being space is becoming perhaps my number one priority in terms of interest level. So innovation isn't just about products; it's about ways of thinking. The innovators who win are the ones who simplify complexity, actually. So those are kind of the areas that I'm most excited about and interested in on a personal level, even.
This kind of leads us into a little bit of some of the ESG stuff I was hoping to touch on with you today. First, maybe can you tell us, and not just about diversity, equity, inclusion, which is such an important topic, but other ESG types of issues. But I do think it'd be worth highlighting the Rosenzweig Report. Can you please share a little bit with the audience what that is, what it's meant for you, and what kind of themes, trends we're seeing?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's hard to believe, but 20 years ago, I began this annual report on women in leadership in Canada. It was inspired by a few things. One, my professor from law school, Erwin Kotler, who started the Raoul Wallenberg Centre for Human Rights, which I now am the board chair of. He was in Parliament at the time. He was Minister of Justice. He was actually the first man on the Women's Caucus, and he transformed our Supreme Court into the most gender representative in the world at the time. So those things kind of inspired me. At the same time, there was a ad executive who came in to speak in Toronto from the UK. In his speech, he said that he felt that there's far fewer women in leadership roles than men because he felt that women didn't have the toughness, they didn't have what it takes to get ahead. And he ended up having to go home pretty quickly after making those statements. But it got me thinking, what's the status of women in leadership? And what's the percentage of women in top roles in Canada? And it's all public record. So what I decided to do is take the 100 top Canadian companies and measure the percentage of women in these top roles. And it turned out, I thought the numbers would be low. I didn't realize they'd be that low. It was 4.6% in 2006. Fast forward to today, we're triple the number, but the numbers are still too low. And the report itself has morphed into a broader discussion of women in leadership south of the border and beyond. And I have sort of an executive summary each year where I talk about the state of human rights and women's rights generally. And I've, over the years, begun getting a lot of influential friends of mine to chime in and comment on the report. So if you look at my 20th anniversary edition report, which I released in March on International Women's Day, you'll see endorsements and quotes and comments from people like Jane Goodall, may she rest in peace, and Sheryl Sandberg and Deepak Chopra and Mark Cuban and CEOs of major banks. And I bring in these influencers really to amplify the discussion. I actually touched on in my executive summary this past year the issue of DEI, which has fallen off in a lot of cases, and it's no longer as popular an issue. And what I said in the report in that regard is, yes, DEI programs have been implemented in sloppy ways in many cases. And in counterproductive ways, but it doesn't mean you throw out the baby with the bathwater, as it were. Who could dispute the importance of, for example, having wheelchair access or equal pay for equal work or non-discrimination in the workplace? These are all things that I don't think reasonable people could argue with. So I think the idea of throwing out the importance of fairness in the workplace because these programs haven't been implemented properly, I think is wrong-headed. And that's one of the themes I talked about in my report. But, ESG, as you said, includes issues such as equality, but there's more complexity and there's more issues around ESG than that. So ESG itself has matured. It's no longer about the trends of the day, which I would agree with. It's about resilience and risk. So boards don't want buzzwords anymore. They want clarity. And what matters in 2025 and beyond is that governance stands up under pressure, that we have supply chain transparency, and that we have truth-telling around geopolitical exposure, and of course, ethical AI. So ESG done well is essentially about long-term thinking. It's leadership with consequences at the end of the day.
I am very curious to see where some of these things go over the next couple of years. I'm very curious to see where organizations and boards start taking the concepts around ESG issues and DEI and how it might transition from catchphrase things to strive for to what feels like in some ways stigmatized things to think about, to where people really land and find their purpose as organizations. I'm taking some governance courses right now, and that's very much top of mind. And it's interesting to hear some of the conversations and even debates around some of these issues. So I know that you're always paying attention, so that's something that I keep poking at you for,
Yeah,
because I
for
think
sure.
that
For sure.
that's one of the things, is this like long time value, like folks who have shown their commitment and long term commitment to many of these issues, and not just poke up when it is profitable.
No, exactly. I'm glad you're working on some of that governance stuff. Really briefly, boards are moving really from ceremonial to strategic, and they're being asked deeper questions about AI, cyber, geopolitics, as we talked about, climate, human capital. So there's a big shift there, and it's great that you're on top of that, because boards can't just review anymore; they need to understand. The days of purely financial oversight are over. And human capital is now a board level subject. So is ethics. So is technology. So the bar has gone up, and it's important to keep up with that.
Can we unpack that just a tiny bit? Not just the trend of that's where it's going, but why it matters. Like, why should it matter for an organization to be thinking beyond strictly financial oversight and strategic oversight, or how do some of these issues fall into that strategic and risk oversight, from your perspective?
Because the stakes are just too high to focus just on the financial piece. The stakes are just too high. We only have one home as humans, and where we're headed is very exciting and very daunting. And we just need to be much more conscious. We need to live this life, especially as leaders in business and otherwise, but business as well. If we're in a leading corporation, we need to be behaving in a way that is in conscious response to the realities of the world beyond finances, rather than in let's say compulsive reaction, which is the way the world typically has conducted itself, unfortunately.
That's a great message. You mentioned that what you're noticing is in the generation that's emerging, in terms of leaders, that they're really seeking out purpose in their work. So when you're interacting with and engaging some of this sort of next generation future talent, are these things that they appear to be thoughtful about? For example, you mentioned ethical AI.
We're at the cusp of of some very, very exciting things moving forward, and we need to ensure that the platforms that will catapult us into new worlds are based on sound considerations, if you will. There's an amazing woman named XEA who Van Jones has described as the Rosa Parks of AI, who I spent time with not too long ago with a few other very esteemed individuals, both from Canada and beyond, in Los Angeles. And she worked at Google, she worked at Microsoft, and she fought the hard fight to ensure that these AI platforms, as they were being built, that they had proper inputs, so that cross-culturally it has the proper nuance moving forward. These are very, very important things. AI, as I alluded to earlier, can take away a lot of the mundane tasks from us. And that could be scary on the one hand, or if you look at it on a more spiritual level, that could be a very good thing, because if the mundane tasks of our lives, or even beyond mundane, if our work is able to be achieved more efficiently because of AI, it allows us to then take our lives to another level and dive deeper into the more spiritual concepts of life that can really elevate us all. Because at the end of the day, I always say that if one is to attempt to achieve peace outside, one needs to be at peace with oneself. Many of my spiritual friends have talked to me about those concepts, and I think it's really, really important. So, as I alluded to earlier, wellness is very important to me. We can use these technologies for good if we set things up in the right way. We can also go the other way, and we need to be very careful of that. Some of these technologies will, not to scare the audience, will allow somebody in their basement to be able to develop a bomb which could in one full swoop take out 500,000 people. So we need to ensure that we take these emerging technologies at this fork in the road into the right direction, into the positive direction, into the spiritual direction, if you will.
I don't know if you're an anomaly, Jay. I do think about you actually from time to time. I'm not going to drop any names. You are in rooms with people that in business who are doing really interesting things. And you're with a lot of leaders across North America and globally in business, in film, your humanitarian work. And I think about the way that, and this isn't a judgment, I'm trying to be more observational, like thinking of the way that Silicon Valley has sort of pivoted over the last year with some of their decisions around, maybe consumer protection, if that's the right term to use, and just really looking what appears to be like focusing on, the bottom line and shareholder value. And then, of course, thinking about where tech can go from that perspective and some of the folks that you might be talking to and probably interested in some of their ideas. And then with some of the value systems that you have, maybe some of those things wouldn't be aligned. I'm not going to make those judgments out loud for everyone to hear, but I am wondering how you navigate that as a business leader, and I'm wondering how you navigate that as a prospective investor. For example, how are you trying to tread the water and figure out like what's a great opportunity and what something that can bring value and high impact in a positive way for humanity versus things that might just be purely financially driven and may not be so good for folks at the end of the day. And society, I guess, is what I'm trying to get at here.
I mean,
carefully.
It's very interesting. Even with this DEI discussion, many very proud capitalists have hung in there of some of the biggest companies in the world. Jamie Dimon, who no one would accuse of not being a capitalist, who runs J.P. Morgan, said he's not backing down on these programs and supporting the importance of diversity and leadership. He said not only because it's moral, because it's good business. And you have many in the tech space who've done the same. Others have gone the other way, and we have to understand that they're not in the philanthropy business. These Silicon Valley executives, they're running businesses that need to be profitable. So they're going to focus on that. They don't necessarily need to, because these businesses can do well otherwise, but the focus is on building and growing their businesses. Someone made a funny quip the other day about some of these large tech companies, eliminating DEI programs and the like. And the comment they made was, if Kamala Harris would have been the president, these same tech executives who are abolishing DEI would have been all over she, her, him, he, and all the rest of it. So some of it's pure business. What I would say is there's fantastic opportunities, as I was saying earlier, regarding, for example, businesses that promote friendly opportunities for climate. There's just massive financial opportunities there. I'm fortunate to be on the board of advisors of a company called Exawatt out of the US, which Sam Altman of ChatGPT and Andreessen Horowitz, perhaps the most prominent venture capital fund, they're backing it. And it's a solution to the electricity problem being caused by AI. So you could work at the cross section of profit and purpose without compromising either, without compromising the purpose part and without compromising the profit part. Another business I mentioned, health, is an area that's of real interest to me, called Curious AI. It's run by a prominent doctor whose proposition is that it's so bizarre that whether you're 100 pounds or 400 pounds, you were given the same prescription for many things, whether it's antibiotics or even something as simple as Advil. So he's developed through AI technology approaches to customize medicine for each and every one of us. These are super profitable businesses, I anticipate. I'm on the advisory board of that one with the co-founder of Moderna, things of that nature. So you really could, if you're purposeful in your approach to business, really play at the cross section of positive impact and profitability.
What have you been seeing in terms of Canadian-led companies in some of these areas of interest that you have? Are they noticeable? Do you see them, or do you think there's more room or a gap at all in the Canadian landscape?
Well, I love Canada, as you do, and the talent, the values, the multicultural advantage. I mentioned a couple of the great businesses on the venture side. Radical Ventures, Shopify is killing it. They're doing really, really amazing work, and there's a bunch of others that are coming up, including in the AI space. Cohere. We sometimes move too slowly. The U.S. market rewards speed and boldness. So my approach is build with Canadian values, but scale with the U.S. mindset, or bring a little bit more of that U.S. mindset to the Canadian landscape. Canada's has developed incredible opportunities in AI and clean energy and life sciences and fintech. You think about Wealthsimple, for example, which is a fantastic business. We just need to be a little louder and a little faster in telling our story, is what I'd say.
When it comes to talent, leadership talent, folks that you're engaging with through your company, are you seeing many Canadians coming through? I'm just curious about your portfolio of clients without disclosing them, of course. But what's kind of the makeup? I'm assuming you work with folks and companies from across borders.
Yeah, I do a lot of U.S. work. There's still a significant amount of Canadian work as well. I just did a senior placement in the wealth management space for one of the big banks here in Canada, which was really a really enjoyable piece of work. So it's a combination. So on the leadership and team building side, I'd say there's a big amount of U.S., but still a significant amount of work in Canada. And then there's international as well.
I guess what I'm curious to know is just when really interesting leaders come across your table, where are they?
So you're saying more on the supply side, the candidate side?
A little bit, like the supply side. And are they wanting to find and source opportunities domestically here? Or are they trying to go abroad and find kind of the shinier compensation package and all of that?
I'd say it's kind of half and half, just given the geopolitical landscape we're in right now. A lot of people are comfortable staying at home. So you have a little bit of that. And then you have the others who are a little more adventurous and realize that, for example, south of the border, there's just exponentially more opportunities. So it's kind of half and half, I'd say.
It does highlight, I think, an interesting opportunity, though, for Canadian companies right now to solicit maybe talent that they 2 years ago perhaps wouldn't have had the same opportunity to attract.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think even Canada, near the end of Trudeau's tenure, slowed down immigration a little bit for a lot of important economic reasons and perhaps security reasons. But Canada's always benefited from the brilliance of international talent. The U.S. is shying a little bit away from that of late. And I think to Canada's advantage, I have a number of clients who've said that they're bringing in some great talent from around the world that might have otherwise gone to the U.S., but it's not that kind of environment anymore over there.
So what else has your interest today, Jay? What are you spending your time looking at? You mentioned obviously some of the healthcare sector and opportunities there, but whether it's in business or otherwise, what's got your attention today?
Yeah, well, I continue to support the team where I can from a big picture perspective, from a human rights point of view. So we're doing a lot of work around the world. As I say, I'm the big picture person. We've got some phenomenal young lawyers who are doing great work advocating the atrocities that are happening in Sudan and representing the women of Iran who've been in prison for not wanting to wear a hijab, and Uyghurs in China. There's plenty of upheaval around the world, Middle East. So from a volunteer perspective, human rights globally is really, really important to me. My business continues to be busy with leadership searches. We had a couple of exits on the investment front this year, which we were thrilled about. One of the companies is actually in the health space, a company called Omada, which just went public on the NASDAQ. So that's some fun stuff. I'm doing some work in the movie space. I was an executive producer on Sean Penn's film Superpower, which was nominated for an Emmy. We're working on a few other really interesting film projects, which is really fun. I'm writing a song with an Academy Award winner and a Grammy Award winner, which will be a really a plea from Mother Earth to her children, which I'm really excited about. Really an anthemic kind of song. So I'm always keeping busy with a lot of stuff, but always my number one priority is my wife and 3 kids. You know, they always take precedence by far over anything else, and you know, I feel very blessed and grateful to have my family really close to me.
You managed to balance a pretty impressive calendar. I don't really know how you do it, but I am thinking that speaks to a little bit. You touched on the humanitarian work and the volunteerism, particularly abroad. And I am wondering, in today's climate where there's a lot of noise and there's a lot of topical issues that folks are paying attention to at home in the United States and just on the news. And many folks are, you know, figuring out their careers as they may have to pivot, affordability. There's a lot going on, I think, just in the grassroots, let's say.
Mhm.
And so I'm curious how that might be impacting volunteer work and folks' just attention to some of the things that may be going on in the world that aren't as visible today as they may otherwise be.
Yeah, it's we're living in a very scary time on the one hand and an exciting time on the other. But given all of the upheaval that we're seeing in the world and given social media and all the insecurities that social media can actually cause in young people, I think ultimately the thing that we need to focus on most is wellness and health and mental health. I was fortunate to be able to see Scott Galloway. I don't know if you know that name. He came into Toronto last week along with Van Jones, and they had a phenomenal panel at an event I helped with, and he just came out with this book describing how very specifically, um, you know, there's a loneliness pandemic um, across the board, but very specifically and much more pronounced is young men. Young men are lost in many cases and feeling uninspired and depressed and trying to find their way, and we need to work really hard to ensure that that young people are inspired and feel a direction and feel a sense of purpose. So while I'm very strong on negotiating the importance of women in leadership as an example, that's not meant to hurt men in any way, and I think that's part of how this DEI backlash has happened, because if men are feeling that they're losing hope and that they're not able to find jobs that excite them and purpose, if you have a leader talking about how, well, AI is the reason, or how is it that that men are now competing in women's sports, like you could see um, young men getting sucked into that vortex of, yeah, I need to vote for this guy because I need some sort of change. Something's not working for me. So I think it's important to listen to and pay attention to all demographics, whether it's young men, young women, or people of older ages, but consume a lot of content and try to seek advice from individuals who are diving into the wellness and the spirituality realm. And that's why, as I say earlier, we need to foster a world where people understand that what comes at us is not necessarily our choice, but how we experience life is. So it's important to be not joyful or happy by accident because the stock market went up, you're happy. Stock market's down, you're unhappy. Someone said something nice to you, you're happy. Someone said something not nice to you, you're not happy. It's important to be joyful by one's very nature. And if we can achieve that within each and every individual on the planet, then what joyful person would ever want to hurt another brother or sister on the planet? So I think ultimately that's the most important thing, is the wellness piece.
I do think about this. A lot of our media that we consume doesn't have borders, of course. But in talking to folks, Canadians, um, this strong hope that the narrative and the way we treat one another in our culture doesn't slide as we may have seen in some other areas, and protecting the kids. I will say, Scott Galloway, by the way, I'm such a big fan, and I'm very familiar with his message. I will be reading his book. I have a young son. I think it's really important. So I will put that in the show notes, actually. Why the heck not? So people are familiar with some of the ideas that folks are talking about, because that is the next generation of they're the people who are going to grow up and hopefully take care of us. And hopefully they feel that they have the ability to do that. I really appreciate how you're able to really take such a high level view across all different areas and lean into that importance. I also believe you've recently had some conversations with Deepak Chopra. I think there's a great YouTube video out there that you recently had a good conversation with him.
Yeah, I'm going to be speaking at his Sages and Scientists Symposium I did last year as well, which is an amazing gathering of scientists and wise men and women really talking about these very issues that we're diving into right now. So I'm looking forward to sharing some of that content when it comes out. It'll be in December.
That's awesome. I know we've jumped around a little bit here. I am wondering with this, what I think a lot of day-to-day folks, what the feeling across the board is, whether they're concerned about like the federal budget or housing affordability or job security. There's a lot of sort of uncertainty, and Canadians in particular tend to be quite cautious. And so not a lot of big decisions seem to be being made right now, which is hard, especially when you're talking from a business perspective and you're thinking like, to be competitive, you have to move fast, you have to do things. Right. I'm just wondering, over the next, say, 12 to 24 months, what are you looking at? What has you feeling a little bit more bullish, or what are you excited about? What opportunities besides the things we've touched on now might be worth sharing with the audience today?
I think at the end of the day, we have to try our best to influence policy. The budget came out recently. We do have a prime minister. I'm not going to be political. I'm actually neither liberal or conservative. I just look at things case by case. But we have a prime minister who does have a lot of business sophistication. Brookfield chair. He was at Goldman Sachs. He was, the head of the Bank of Canada and the Bank of England, etc. So I think we're in pretty good hands from that perspective in terms of economic sophistication. So that could be cause for optimism. We'll see how it all plays out. I haven't read through the entire budget. It's a pretty thick book. But I think most importantly, whatever government does, and you try to influence as best you can, we need to, as private citizens, be gritty and be innovative, and whatever's going on from a macro point of view, we need to build and to innovate. And I see a lot of really fascinating Canadian companies continue to sprout up. Wealthsimple, I mentioned earlier, they started a venture capital fund, and I just spoke with somebody to see if I can be helpful, who's building up one of their portfolio companies. It's at the intersection of AI and accounts receivable, but it's really a cool business, So I have, from that point of view, faith in the Canadian people, faith in young people within Canada. I think the future is bright if we just stay very grounded in who we are and as individuals, and focus as well on the wellness piece as a foundation to building our country to new heights.
You mentioned policy. Is there anything associated with well-being in general? Are there any ideas that you have that you think could help move the needle?
I think as part of Canadian policy, we have to have an emphasis on physical fitness. I personally exercise every single day, and when you exercise and you move and you sweat, it takes out the bad toxins, both physically and mentally, and it changes your chemistry. I think there needs to be more of a focus on the mental health issues that we're all facing. So to me, the Canadian government needs to look at all these issues of health, physical and mental, with a really, really high level of priority. And I think it could be done.
I'm sort of on the other end when it comes to business. You've probably spoken to far many more Canadian entrepreneurs than I have in your lifetime. Are there certain barriers that folks commonly feel get in the way to their scaling in the way that they'd like, and perhaps in ways where they end up kind of moving out of Canada or just prohibiting their growth in general?
I think there was at one point some taxation schemes that the tech community wasn't happy about, but in the end, I think those propositions were removed. I think we probably could have more incentives for entrepreneurship and innovation. I know there is already, but we could probably be a little more aggressive in that regard. But the bottom line is the Canadian businesses need to, if they want to stay in Canada, it's one thing, but they need to very quickly expand internationally to be able to play on a global scale. But if you're Canadian based and you're global, people are going to want to be at the head office. And that means more amazing jobs here in Canada and uplifting Canada's image as a great leader in the innovation space. So there needs to be a little bit more focus on those sorts of things. And I think Shopify, it would be the obvious example of a business who's done that really, really well. It's stayed in Canada, developed great homegrown talent within Canada, and it's competing as good as anybody on a global basis.
A lot of my guests to date have been from British Columbia. That'll change as they move along. You're over in Toronto. I'm wondering whether or not there might be networks or hubs or event type opportunities that may not be as obvious to listeners that would be worthwhile for them, whether they're, and you can take this whichever way you think is the most interesting, but whether they're innovators, tech folks, entrepreneurs, or even people who are in philanthropy, like whichever way you want to lean in. I'd love to know what stays kind of top of mind for you in kind of the year to year.
Yeah, you know what? You and I should start some event programs, and maybe we can build out something that could be inspiring and productive for Canadians. I just had the CEO of C100 in my living room the other day. C100 is a group out in Silicon Valley of expat Canadians who support each other, and they connect back into the Canadian landscape in very productive ways. But listen, maybe you and I could do something that could be worthwhile and differentiated.
Hey, well, you all heard it here first, folks. We'll keep you keep you on top of it. You better be subscribed. That way we can keep you informed. I don't want to keep you much longer, but I am thinking about having watched you in many ways from afar over the last 4 years or so, and all of the interesting things that you're doing. I'm wondering, as you move into the next stage of your career, are you thinking about legacy? I would assume you do, given the work that you do. But for someone like you who's such a leader in the Canadian ecosystem, what does legacy mean to you?
Well, on the one hand, legacy used to be more meaningful to me than it is now. I'm realizing that legacy from an ego point of view is more about you worrying about your own name and credit and the like, and that's not so important to me. If I could leave behind the world where people are happy and joyful and thriving, and there's so much in a state of ecstasy that they don't even remember me, that's fine. But the quiet legacy is there. Even you think about people who put their name on hospital buildings and whatnot. Like, is it really necessary? They say in many ways that the highest form of giving is giving anonymously. On the other hand, if your name is there and it inspires other people to do good, and the fact that you gain this recognition is inspiring others to want to do something similar, then that's a positive thing. But at the end of the day, legacy is simple for me. Did I lift people up? Did I leave things better than I found them? Professionally, it's building teams and leaders who go on to shape the world. Personally, it's about compassion. It's about bridge building. It's about being useful in the moments that matter, whether for communities, for human rights, or the next generation. So if I can help people unlock their potential and also reduce suffering in the world, then that's a good life.
I do want to make sure that we can link any important organizations in the show notes so people can learn more. I will go through and re-listen to our conversation to note some of the companies you've mentioned. But if there are any organizations that are doing meaningful work that you're part of right now that I can direct people to, I'd love to take a minute to touch on those.
Well, that would be great. As I say, my main area of volunteer work would be the Raoul Wallenberg Centre for Human Rights. So definitely would love to highlight that. Of course, the Rosenzweig Report is another volunteer piece that's important to me. Happy to send you some links if you aren't able to uncover them, and appreciate you highlighting these important initiatives.
Jay, thank you again so much for joining me today here on Canada Now. And thank you to everybody for listening and tuning in. Please don't forget to subscribe to the show and drop a review if you're enjoying these episodes. And please do also check things out on YouTube if you're listening on audio. All right, everybody, new episodes each week. Thank you so much for tuning in. Have a wonderful day.